Since the late 90s, Shawn Tuma has been working with legal departments and security teams at the intersection of law and technology. This has given him a unique perspective for how these important defenders work well together and do not work well together, and what a difference that can make with how their organizations manage cyber risk. This led him to write a book called the GC+CISO Connection to help start a dialogue and strengthen the partnership between these critically important roles. The next step is to bring together people who understand these roles to share their experiences and continue the dialogue. Because none of us have all the answers, it is through conversations like these that we can all improve how we work together to improve cyber resilience. This is the GC+CISO Connection Show.
Hello and welcome to the GC+CISO Connection Show. I'm your host, Shawn Tuma. And joining me today is my friend and former Spencer Fane colleague, Carly Duvall Le Riche.
Hi, Shawn.
How are you, Carly?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Well, glad to have you. And Carly is the general counsel for Cariloop. I said that right?
You did, okay, correct.
Good. And Cariloop is located here in the DFW area, but you flew in today from Kansas City, right?
That's correct. I have been a Kansas City-based attorney for 15 years. It's my home. It's where I grew up. It's also where I headquartered my practice. But the company I work for, Cariloop, as you mentioned, is based here in Dallas. So I get an opportunity to come here to the Metroplex quite often with work and love working in the area as well.
Well, great. So tell us, what does Cariloop do?
Yes. So we are a caregiving support platform. And so what that means is if you are a caregiver, of which many of us are, whether we're caring for young children or perhaps we have a parent who's aging or another adult in our life that maybe is experiencing a chronic illness, at any point, many of us are put in the place where we're caring for someone else. And Cariloop produces digital tools, technology to help you on that journey. So we create ways to digitize things like medical records and doctor's information so you can have it all centrally located as you're helping support the person you're caring for. We also connect to care networks for providers if you need in-home care, whether that's a nanny or a home health nurse, things like that. And then we partner that with a human-powered connection. So we employ care coaches who are licensed in the social work services. So former nurses, social workers, education specialists, and you can reach out to them, connect with them directly, and they will partner with you on your care journey to answer your questions, to provide support, and to sometimes do the tasks for you. And so that's what we do. So every day I get to show up and decide and figure out ways that we're going to support people who are caring for others.
That's awesome.
It's amazing.
And so you'd be great on the marketing side too, by the way.
Right.
You really nailed that.
I've been auditioning for a role on the marketing team.
Might be a little easier than legal
right.
sometimes. It's interesting, I talk a lot about security and legal, and one of the issues I talk about and that I wrote about in the book is how legal and security are a lot alike in that they manage risk.
Yes.
And marketing is a lot like IT in that they make things happen. So that division between IT and security, marketing, and legal.
Absolutely.
Making stuff happen versus preventing risk a lot or managing risk. So that's an interesting thing. But so that's a technology platform at its base, right?
Exactly. That is.
Yeah. And you and I, when I joined Spencer Fane in 2018, we got to know each other first over Twitter.
Yes,
that's
right.
Twitter back in the day because you were a very prolific tweeter.
Yes.
Twitter user.
Yes, absolutely.
I used it quite a bit, and so we really connected over that, and then met at our firm retreat. And then from there, so from there you ended up moving in house. But give us your background about kind of how you got into technology and to where you are here today.
Absolutely. So my legal career has been shaped very much by the economic forces that have been at play. So I graduated law school in 2009, shortly after the 2008 recession had started, and it was famously a challenging time to enter the workforce with a law degree. And the result of that was I came out of law school thinking I was going to go and do employment work. That's what I really had an interest in at the time. And instead, I arrived at the first law firm I worked at, and they said, you're just going to do whatever comes in the door. That's where we are. And a lot of us that were practicing law, in 08, 09, 2010 kind of remember what that was like, and that you were doing whatever you could to kind of stay afloat. And so from day one, I was a generalist. And I did a little bit of everything, and not a lot of any one thing. And it was a wonderful foundation for a legal career, particularly one that ultimately led me to be in-house. And so early on, I got early experience in intellectual property, in litigation, in risk management and insurance work, and some corporate work as well. And that was going great for me. And then a handful of years into my practice, I got the opportunity to work with one of the ride-sharing apps. And I know now it's ubiquitous. You land at the airport like I just did, and there's an Uber or a Lyft right there waiting for you. But that's not what it always was. Those were true disruptors that arrived in the market at one point. And so I got the opportunity to go around the country for about a year as they were disrupting the market and coming in contact with a lot of law enforcement, municipal enforcement, and how are we going to chart their path forward through this. And that was the moment where I said, okay, I'm going to take all this stuff that I know, all this little stuff that I know in all these different areas, and I think I can use it to work with technology companies. And I think that this broad experience and this broad base is really going to serve me well there. And from that moment, I really focused my legal practice on advising technology companies, particularly those that were trying to interrupt or disrupt something that had sort of traditionally been provided by more kind of standard non-technological businesses.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, what a great background to, we never really know what we're being prepared for.
No.
Right? And it can be disheartening sometimes when you're going through a season and you're like, this is not what I wanted to do. Why am I stuck doing this? And then later in life you look back and you're like, aha.
Yeah.
Now I get it. Now I see.
I can't imagine my career had I, designed it kind of paint by number style to say, well, I'm going to do this for a few years, then I'm going to go on and do this, and then that's really going to set me up. I did not know when I came out of law school that, 15 years later, I would be the general counsel of a small technology company with a mission and a value proposition that I care deeply about. So I couldn't have even designed the steps to get me there because I did not know that's what I would want it to be.
Yeah.
But at each stage in my career, I've done what's right, the next best thing for me, and it's worked out.
That's
and
awesome.
It's going to keep working itself out, I think.
No, I was the same way. I mean, in law school, I've always had this fear of public speaking, which I know people may be laughing at right now, but I was truly scared to death to speak in public, so I didn't want to do anything with litigation. So I decided I was going to be a corporate lawyer because they were the ones that wore the tweed jackets, smoked the pipe in the dark study, and that kind of thing. And that was what was in my mind. And then the whole Y2K thing came along. I got into that and have been stumbling my way through it ever since, but I had no idea back then, So when I joined Spencer Fane in 2018, you were already working representing startups, technology companies, really, I mean, a lot of the technology, cyber, privacy work that we have now as a practice, you were already doing that.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite things that I did at Spencer Fane, and I will continue to laud the firm I came from, the firm that you're at. I think it's a wonderful place. It was a wonderful home for me for a number of years. But one of the things I created there, or co-created with another one of your partners, was the Spencer Fain Startup Lab. And so the firm invested in startup companies by providing its legal services, which were mine and others as well, to those startup companies for free. And it was founded upon a belief that I had, and I still have, which is that startup companies, early stage companies, should be entitled to the same quality legal representation that more established enterprise type companies have. I firmly believed in that. The firm bought into that. It's still going strong.
Yeah.
It's an amazing, it's spread to other cities beyond the original Kansas City location where we started it, which is incredible and amazing and really reflects the firm's commitment to those early stage companies, but even broader, as you mentioned, the technology companies, the companies that have unique and complex privacy issues and cybersecurity issues and all of that. They've really built something, I think, really unique and special there.
Well, I'm really glad to see that. It is still going strong, and I know several of our, your former colleagues,
Yes.
my colleagues, are a part of that, and that's really awesome. So in your day job
Yes.
now, you deal with a lot of data,
I do.
a lot of privacy issues, a lot of technology issues, a lot of cybersecurity issues. So whenever I was thinking about who would I want feedback from on this book, you were one of the people I thought about with that. So
Well, thank you.
yeah, tell me a little bit about some of the issues you face and deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, so first I'll explain a little bit about exactly what my role is. So my title is General Counsel, and I'm at a small startup company. We've got about 100 employees. We're small but mighty, and we're tremendously proud of the product and the services we provide. And we provide that with a very lean team, and we do that intentionally. And so as a result of that, I, as General Counsel, have 3 critical areas in the company that fall underneath me. So obviously there's the legal function, the traditional legal function of a General Counsel. There's the compliance function, and then also underneath me is the information security function that reports up to my executive function. So I am both the GC, and I would never proclaim to be a CISO, but that function does reside within my organization at the company.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because one of the key issues that I was thinking through when I started writing was there's so much discussion out in the security community over reporting,
Yes.
over who reports to what role, and there's a lot of confusion about it, it seems like. But one of the things I came away with, I had some pretty strong opinions when I started writing, and then as I kept going, I changed a lot of that. And then when I've had conversations since then, I've realized, the organization really dictates how that should go more than some formality of, the CISO must report to the CIO, which must,
Yes.
that kind of thing. So how does that work in your organization?
Yeah, so there's 2 things. I completely agree with you, because prior to my current role, I was at another technology company, and their information security resided underneath the CIO. So that individual, had executive leadership over IT, information security, and then the product and engineering function, which is, that's a huge overall organization that he managed. But it made sense to me when I was in that organization why that structure would exist. And I completely understood and always had a really strong relationship with legal. And I worked very closely with the information security team there. In my organization, we're a little bit smaller, a little bit leaner. It made sense for it to fall with me, because my whole orienting philosophy within my organization is that I am in charge of risk management. And I risk manage from a legal perspective. I risk manage when it comes to compliance, and I risk manage when it comes to information security. And so even though my background isn't in the technical expertise that an information security, individual might have, I feel prepared and capable of leading that, particularly kind of in my executive role, because at the end of the day, it fits so well with the other things I've been tasked with.
Yeah, it really does. And, so the subtitle of the book is The Defenders of the Organization,
Yes.
because security and legal, you're defending. That's your role,
Yes.
protecting. And the nature of the position and the nature of dealing with always the grays. There's never an absolute answer. Like so many of those similarities translate from security and legal. I've always felt like the legal training we get is really something powerful in helping us in this role. But what is the next level of person? So who's reporting up to you directly?
So I have an on the information security side, I have an information security analyst. And so he leads our information security function, and he has the technical background, plus also sort of that unique aspect that I love that our information security professionals bring, which is a business understanding too. You have to understand kind of where things work. And then he partners closely with our IT team to kind of make sure, so our IT team will sometimes execute on some of the information security tasks that we need, particularly from a defense and threat defender standpoint. And then on more organization and kind of enterprise level, he'll partner with our engineering team. Certainly, we are a technology company, so we have a sizable part of both our business investment and our human capital investment. Our people are engineers. They're in production, they're developing, they're coding, they're creating new features and new product build. And so he obviously works very closely with that team to make sure that the risk is managed in that area on the production side. And so then I function, I very much feel as like more of an executive sponsor. Kind of in that I'm not doing the day-to-day information, and like nobody wants me to be quite honest, doing the day-to-day piece of it. But what I am doing is I am kind of consistently pushing and advocating both within the rest of our executive team, when it comes to budgets, when it comes to priorities, when it comes to focus. I do the same with our board. And so, when I do quarterly board updates and things like that, I'm consistently encouraging us to kind of continually risk manage. And then from an organization perspective, I have an avenue to give updates at all hands meetings and to really push for training and to kind of, at my level, I have the ability to sort of touch the whole organization. And so that's how very much I see my role, is I am a sponsor and a leader, and I'm not a doer. I have other people that do that.
Sure. You're in, I often talk about the tactical and the strategic roles. You're in a strategic position, but you're in an advocate position within the organization. When I had Dina Strove on here, who is the general counsel for North Texas Toll Authority, which is right behind us.
Yes.
Dina made the point that I thought was very, very important for the people in the security community to understand, and that is that your general counsel can be your greatest advocate
100%.
for elevating security within the organization.
Yes. The other thing I think we share with our information security professionals as lawyers is that, and I was having this conversation with my CEO last week, I said, at times I find it difficult to show my true value when the greatest thing I've brought to the organization is preventing that which did not happen.
Yeah.
How do you value that? How do you put a dollar amount on that? How do you, put pen to paper at the time of your, quarterly review or your end of year review and explain to someone what that's worth? And I think an information security professional is in the exact same seat. It's one thing to be able to report on metrics and say how many threats your threat defender software or whatever stopped, or how many service attacks there were that your systems prevented. But how do you put a dollar amount on what that would have been and what it would have been to the organization in order to both justify your existence, but also the desire to do more? Because as you and I both know, the threats are always changing.
Yeah.
And the attacks are changing, and your approaches and your defenses to them have to change. And so it's that balance of saying, I've done such a good job, nothing bad has happened. And also, I need more. I need to grow. I need to invest, to show you continually that, we're continually meeting that challenge as it comes to us.
Yeah, I mean, it really is difficult. And that is one of the biggest challenges that cybersecurity faces, but legal also.
Yes, 100%.
Because, like you said, it's the things that didn't happen many times that are the greatest value we've added. But the evolving nature of cybersecurity is something that I always feel like gets missed by executives, by the board, because, I go back to the days of Y2K. And Y2K was going to be my rocket ship to stardom and early retirement. Here I am 26 years later, right? But Y2K was a technology problem that could be fixed. Cybersecurity is not. It's a human nature problem.
Yes.
It's warfare.
Yes.
And what works today doesn't work tomorrow because the threat actors are evolving. So one of the things that brought you to town this trip, and I'm very glad it did, is you have a board meeting coming up.
I do.
And I recognize every organization, like the lean and mean, you're going to have a lot more roles. People are going to be doing a lot more things than maybe a Fortune 100 or whatever. How do you communicate this issue? Do you have your security person brief you, or do they brief the board? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so we are a SOC 2 Type 2 organization. So those are the controls that I operate in. And I firmly believe that whether you're SOC 2 or NIST or ISO, whatever your organization is using, that will be your starting place to tell you who you communicate to, when, and why. And so my controls tell me that, at least annually, hopefully more often than that, I report on certain issues to the board. So I start there, and that's pretty easy. So obviously we do our annual report. So I report that, they review that, they approve it. So I have that reporting mechanism. And then at each quarter, certainly if there are any incidents that I have to bring to the board, I will do so. Luckily, that's not the situation that we're in. And then other than that,
you're smiling.
I'm smiling.
If you were coming here,
I don't know that I'd be here if I had one of those going on that I had to report to the board. But, certainly if we were in that scenario, there is a disclosure of, the risks and liabilities that I have an obligation to report to my board. So certainly would do that. And then beyond that, I feel it's very much I'm reporting on the risk management. So I am reporting on the actions we have taken. In our case, we report quarterly. So the actions we have taken over the last quarter to defend the organization from threats. And so, yes, I ask my analyst. In this instance, the report I'm giving is going to be on specifically software improvements or additions that we have recently deployed to better protect the organization. And so I asked him to kind of give me a quick summary on that I could share with the board. And so that's one way that I do it. So I typically kind of look like that. What does my controls require me to do? Are there any liabilities or kind of risks that I feel obligated to disclose? And then beyond that, what can I inform them about the risk management activities that we have undertaken since our last reporting?
Yeah, that's awesome. So for our security people that are watching and that hopefully are listening to your experience, what are some things that you could, some tips you could give the security people on how they can better get, whether it's their legal counsel, whether it's their CIO, CTO, whether it's their CEO, how can they make it easier for you to go deliver this report? What information can they give you? How can they give it to you to really make it to where you're like, yes, I can go do this?
Yes. So one of the things that I love is, our board, ours is less way. Most of the boards I've worked with are this way. I'm sure other organizations may have a different perspective, but a lot of times they're oriented by numbers. They spend most of their life looking at balance sheets and profit and loss statements and analyzing numbers like that. So talk to them in their language. Every organization I've worked at, if once you start to quantify the threats that an organization, how many times is your system under attack, or how many emails did your email system quarantine and keep out of inboxes, things like that. Many times your software will provide you that data and information if you go ask it. I think boards respond well to that, because it's one thing to say to them, we did a great job protecting you from the risks, and it's another thing to start to quantify those. And I think that that's the world they live in, so meet them there.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice, because one of the biggest struggles we have in cyber is risk quantification.
Yeah.
How do we, for 15 years or more, when talking about the risk of a data breach or something, we focused on the privacy side, the compromise of data and the number of records times the cost per record of a data breach, right? And that's how we've come up with numbers, like especially for insurance purposes. But it really took ransomware, not the data theft, but the encryption event to say, what's the cost of our operations being down for a day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days? And I don't know a good answer to that, right? I mean, that's a struggle, because, when we're looking at insurance, we've got to come up with an amount many times for what's our limits. What's our cost of doing our business operations per day, things like that. What are your thoughts on those issues and how to, there's not an answer, right? This is the world of the grays that we live in. How do we work towards that?
What I think about more is not what is the cost of, let's say your systems go down 3 days or whatever. That's really hard for people to fathom what that would really look at. And you can put a number on a piece of paper, and I think it's still hard for them to understand what it really is. But numbers in that area that I think have worked well for me, as I've explained it, is, for example, we do, penetration testing, we do business continuity scenarios every year. We practice, we do incident response scenarios. That's part of what we do as our organization. And we report positively on how those things go. And so it's really hard to say, if we were down for X many days, this is what it would cost our organization. But the converse of that is to say, these are the steps we have taken to risk manage, and we have tested this. And we think that, if we were to go down, this is how fast we could come up. If we were to go down, here's where we can, access some backup data and come back. If we were to go down, here are our third-party service providers who may be able to help with our operational, management until we're fully back up. Those kinds of things. That narrative has been well received when I have been giving it to, whether it's an executive team or a board, because that feels like they can get their arms around that and understand that, and also focus on that. And so I agree with you. It's really hard to quantify the worst day. People just feel a lot more comfortable kind of identifying, okay, here's what we can do.
Yeah. I'll often say, because so much of my work's been incident response.
Yeah.
Serving as like a breach quarterback. And my best clients are those who've had a major incident.
Yeah.
Because they're like, we never want to go through this again. No. My wish for every client, in a sense, is that they would have an event that shocks them into thinking we're about to have to go through this. Yes. You go through like the first 3 hours of it, and then you realize, oh, thank God, this wasn't what we thought it was.
Everybody needs a Cuban Missile Crisis. Get really close.
Yeah, that's a
Get
great
really
way.
close.
I love that.
Yes.
I'm gonna use that
it.
going forward.
Yeah.
But it really is a great way to prepare for that. And the buzzword in security now is resilience.
Yes.
That's where, like, we've come to the resilience term, right? And I've used this since like 2016 in saying, to me, resilience comes from that great American philosopher, Rocky Balboa.
Oh, yeah.
When he's talking to his kid, and he goes, kid, life ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard can you get hit and keep moving forward.
Now, see, I'm going to take that from you. We just
It's
traded.
yours.
Yeah.
It's yours, right from Rocky. But in the business world, that's what we're trying to do. We're not here for the sake of security or the sake of legal. We're here to treat people and help people and keep our platform and our people going.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that completely. And there's so much to be learned there from resilience, because we had I had a joke with a friend of mine who's also a lawyer, and he said that if his information security officer had their way, they'd accept no data and they would be perfectly secure at all times, and there'd be no risk. But obviously, that in order to operate your business, in order to service your clients, to meet their needs, you have to take some of the risks.
Yeah.
So what's the better stance to be is to teach resilience around that, and to figure out how to kind of sort of weather some of the storms that are bound to happen and come through.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fact of doing business in today's world. And how do we minimize that, so that we can stay focused on our true objective? And Carly, it may come as no surprise, but this episode went by very quickly.
Yes, it did.
Are there any other points that you feel like we should have talked about and didn't, or anything that you felt like is something you wanted to share today?
All I will say, I think this. You've been in this area for, you said, 26 years now, which is that the importance of these issues that we have talked about, they're not going away. If anything, they're only becoming more and more important as the days go. So to the extent that there is a general counsel out there or someone in the legal field that has been reticent to learn and really start to understand information security, cybersecurity, data privacy, things like that, I think more and more the role is necessitating that you do, even at non-technology companies, even at companies that you think that's not really where our focus is. I think it's so critically important that you kind of have to learn it. And so I would say find a place that feels comfortable for you to start.
Yeah.
And then for my information security professionals, my big piece of advice there is wherever it is in your organization, find your advocate. Because that's what information security requires. It really requires somebody advocating for you, encouraging the investment, supporting the work, and the commitment. And so find out who that is. And maybe it's your CIO, maybe it's your general counsel, maybe it's someone else in the organization, but wherever that person is, really find out who they are and how they can support you.
Yeah, that's fabulous advice, Carly. And in fact, that's a big purpose for why I decided to write this book, was to give a starting point. Yeah. And that's why I always like it if someone either in security or legal has 2 copies,
Yes.
one for themselves and then one to give to their counterpart
Yeah.
to say, let's talk about this.
Yes.
This is a place to start.
Yeah.
And then you develop that relationship, and that's where we go from there. And so,
Absolutely.
Carly, we're going to definitely have to do this
Yes,
more
for
often.
sure.
I know there's a lot of additional great
Yes.
points that you have that I'd love to be able to share. We're going to get to those one day in the future. But for
Absolutely.
now, thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
joining me.
much.
And this has really been wonderful. And so with that, it's time to wrap up this episode of the GC+CISO Connection Show. Thank you all for tuning in and watching and listening. Make sure to go find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, all the other places where the podcast is being shared. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.